Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. Andy Spiteri alongside the returning, triumphant, graduated Doom Crossing. What's up, Doom? How you doing?
Doing pretty good, my man. Hold up, gotta show the little graduation cap there.
Yes. Yeah, congrats. I'm assuming that listening to the last episode of Omega was not high on your priority list last week, but we gave you a little nice little shout out and a congrats. So once again, face to face, congrats, buddy. You earned it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do have the Alien episode bookmarked. I have not had a chance to watch it yet, but yeah, I really appreciate it. We did it, man. We survived the grind. We survived the 31 plus page capstone paper, and it's all over. We did it.
wild stuff, man. And now you just got the real world now. The grind of life
the real fun begins now. Or what is it that Anakin says? This is where the fun begins.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. I woke up today, went to go take a shower, cold water, and I was like, what is happening? And I found this is adult problems. I found out that my hot water heater tank is kaput. So,
no!
Yeah.
I've had that happen before. That sucks.
I know. I had to do the 5-minute shiver kind of shower and get out of there as quick as I can. So, yeah.
And especially in Canada too, I would imagine.
You know what? It's actually like disgustingly hot right now.
Okay.
It's crazy hot. In fact, okay, so this is for all of our listeners. We're gonna get to what we're talking about today, but a little story time here. So Doom and I were just chatting before we got on, and I was telling him I had an eye appointment today, and I got my eyes dilated. And this is actually the second time in the last 3 weeks that I've had this done. And last time it was like raining, so I got out and it wasn't that bad. It was cloudy and whatever. Today I get out and it's like bright and monstrously sunny everywhere. So I'm just like walking around with my hands over my eyes, just like kind of like a gremlin almost. Some kind of creature. Anyways, it was a bad scene. Bad scene.
That's disgusting, man. I'm so sorry.
Wow.
It's actually funny. So when I got home last week, it was actually so hot that I actually voluntarily took a cold shower, and it actually was amazing because it was like, oh my gosh, it was like 98, and no one had turned on the AC, so it was just all the heat had built up in the specific location in the house because of the height where it's located.
Yeah.
But
tough.
funny how that works out, right?
Cold showers are good at like an afternoon, but like at first thing in the morning, it's a little bit tough because you're still clinging to that warmth of bed, of course. But nevertheless, so yeah, it's been a few weeks. We haven't got a chance to catch up, but I'm really excited about today's episode actually because for anybody that has been living under a rock, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out a few weeks ago. And
small indie release.
Yeah. Listen, I love Metroid and I love Zelda. They're my like two children here, okay? But like I've been like 100% going into this Tears of the Kingdom game. And I was like, I felt a little bit bad because I was like, okay, like what do we want to do on the Metroid side? And all I could think about was playing more Tears of the Kingdom. So instead of just kind of half-assing it through a show, I was like, how can we talk about Tears of the Kingdom but with Metroid? And I wanted to almost pitch to you something today, Doom, an open world Metroid game. And we've kind of like dabbled around this concept in episodes previous in the years past and talked about like, could it work? Would it work? What is open world? Is that antithetical to what a Metroidvania is? And I was kind of on like team don't know if open world would work. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know if I'm off that team yet, but like I do have some ideas for how an open world Metroid game could work. Now, would it be awesome? That's debatable, but I'm gonna pitch you on that today, anyways. So I want to ask you two things, Doom. First, in very just brief synopsis here, but how are you digging Tears of the Kingdom?
Oh, it's wonderful so far. I'm absolutely loving it. I will say, it took a little bit longer for it to click with me than it did with Breath of the Wild. I feel like Breath of the Wild, I was clicking with it fairly immediately, like after I started playing it. Tears of the Kingdom, it took a couple hours for me. I wasn't really quite getting it at first. I felt a bit overwhelmed by all the new mechanics and kind of everything to do. But as I started playing more to it and I started adjusting to it bit by bit, I started getting into it more. And at this point now, it's absolutely sunk its teeth into me, and we're back. We are so back now.
It would take something
done...
monumental to dethrone this as like game of the year. Let me just tell you that. I don't think it can be done, actually. And with all due respect to Metroid Prime Remastered, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, nothing is going to dethrone Metroid Prime 4 probably won't even dethrone that for me. So, but yeah, Tears of the Kingdom, it's awesome so far. Even though I'm nowhere near as creative as some of the stuff that other people online are building.
Oh my god!
I just build really long bridges. That's like the extent of my creativity. But
I saw somebody build a Metal Gear in
Metal Gear Rex,
which is amazing. And there's people, I mean, crucifying these poor Koroks. Like it's a tough scene in Hyrule these days. So for honestly, reference, go ahead.
I was about to say, no, if there's anyone that deserves to be crucified, it's not the Koroks. They're cool. They're cute. They're adorable. They're chill. It's that freaking the Rito kid, the one that becomes like your sidekick.
What?
That kid is so annoying. I hate him.
Oh my god, I would die for little Tulin. I love that little bird.
Oh my god, he's the worst.
Oh,
stop. He has like the most whiny semi-adolescent. Oh my gosh, I hate it.
Boo! I love that little kid. He's awesome. He's helpful too.
He is very helpful. He's got a good skill set.
Shameless plug, actually. Over on the Zeldcast, we just talked about the Rito subplot, the regional phenomenon. So you can check that out if you want to get some in-depth thoughts. So I right now am 85 hours into Tears of the Kingdom. I've got 104 shrines. I've got about 50 of like the depth like shrines, like the light roots, and I think I'm mostly done with like most of the main quest, except for actually fighting Ganondorf. Now I'm nowhere near 100% of the game, of course, but I've put some time into it for sure.
Yeah. So I've done the Rito quest. Obviously, I've done that, and then after that, I kind of just took I stopped doing the main quest, and I'm just kind of exploring the map and doing a bunch of side quests, looking for shrines, doing the towers and all that. And I'm just kind of exploring the map at the moment, seeing what's new, seeing what's the same. I do not like these new Stone Talus battle stations. I will say, I already hated the Stone Taluses from the first game, and I hate them even more now in this game. So thank you very much, Tears of the Kingdom devs, for that.
Dude, I will say that the enemy variety, first of all, is like way more diverse than in Breath of the Wild, but like the amount of enemies that just like whip your ass are
oh my
staggering.
god, the gloom hands are like right out of like oh my gosh, I can't remember my horror directors right now. It's right out of a nightmare though.
it was creepy. It reminded me of Dead Hands from Ocarina of Time, actually. And so I was campaigning for years over on the Zelda cast. I was like, they should bring back like the original bosses from the NES games and just have them as like overworld bosses. So I, to steal a phrase from Dak, popped off when I saw Gleeok in that first trailer, and I kind of I was feeling brave. I was feeling confident, macho, and I was like, I'm gonna go and take down that Gleeok. And I kid you not, this thing killed me in probably like 3 seconds. 3 seconds, and I was dead. And it was so humbling and embarrassing. I think I could probably take one down now, but I haven't even stepped foot up to a Gleeok yet.
That was me going against my first Lionel back in Breath of the Wild, and I'm sure Lionels are like not the least of my worries in this game. I'm sure there's way worse stuff out there. I haven't fought those King Ghidorah dragons yet, the 3-headed dragons.
That's Gleeok. Yeah.
I was gonna say those are clearly inspired by Godzilla.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's I want to say Gleeok is the boss of level 4 dungeon in Zelda. So I was kind of hoping that like Gleeok would be there and Aquamentus and like Goma. Gleeok is enough, so I thought that it was super cool. But why don't we? I'll tell you what. I'm gonna pitch you my open world Zelda game. Open world Metroid game. I've got Zelda on the brain. I'm gonna pitch you my open world Metroid game. You can give me your thoughts, and we'll circle back to Tears of the Kingdom at the end. So originally I had 2 questions for you. My second question, besides how's it going with Zelda, is what is your stance on, I guess, open world Metroid? Because like I wouldn't say like it's super super divisive in the community, but like I do think that there is merit to the people that say like I don't think I want an open world Metroid because it kind of goes against the principles and the foundations that the Metroidvania genre is really built on. So what is your kind of what are your 2 cents on that?
Oh, I've always been a proponent of it. I think you could absolutely do an open world Metroid. I think, back in Breath of the Wild, I was thinking like, maybe there's some elements of I don't want a Breath of the Wild a Metroid game. I don't want to like make it a I don't want Metroid version of Breath of the Wild, but I think looking at Breath of the Wild and seeing, how they were able to radically change the formula while also keeping just enough to keep it in that same kind of domain. I feel like you could do something similar with Metroid. And on top of that, there's other, stuff like, the Batman Arkham series, after Arkham Asylum, they went open world and, they still were able to keep that same formula. And so I think I think it's clear that, you have some examples of what you can do. Halo Infinite, even though I'm not a fan of that game, I think there's some really cool open world mechanics, specifically with how the grapple beam is utilized, that I think could work in an open world Metroid game. And so, looking at all the examples out there, theoretically, I think it could be done. Do I know the exact formula? Not necessarily, and I don't want Metroid Prime to be open world either. Or Metroid Prime 4 specifically, I should say. But like in the future, like once we have more powerful consoles, and once Metroid is a more regular series again, and it's in a position where we can take more risks. Yeah, I think an open world game could absolutely work.
Well, this is my 2 cents on that. Where, like I said, I was kind of like team a little bit on the fence about if I wanted an open world Metroid game or not, and I think I came to a few realizations that kind of pushed me to like, yeah, I think we should do it. And the first realization is that Metroid Prime, when it came out, was already somewhat of like a departure from the established Metroid formula. Like, yes, it was still a Metroidvania, but like there were a lot of like very different elements about Metroid Prime. And while I think that the change to open world would be more drastic than that, it's not like you haven't seen like a big change in Metroid before, to that, maybe not that extent, but like at least you saw it, and it did take some fans a little while to get on board with that. And then the second thing is, to your point, like I think that when I play Breath of the Wild or when I play Tears of the Kingdom, I think that specifically Tears of the Kingdom, I'm going to single out. I think it does like a really good job of getting Zelda into that open world, but like keeping the core elements of what makes like a good Zelda game. And I think that like, yeah, there are some things that Tears of the Kingdom maybe doesn't excel at like a traditional Zelda game would. But I think that if you were to just realize that you might need to make some concessions in order to do this open world Metroid game, and then also realize too, like there is a possibility that like this open world Metroid game could finally level up the series to a new tier of, let's just call it success. Maybe make it like a B series for Nintendo instead of like kind of a C series, right? Like I think that trade-off would probably be worth it. So I kind of cooked up some thoughts and notes and ideas about what I would, kind of want my open world Metroid game to be. And after my points here, I want you to kind of interject and tell me if you thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the side, something like that. So let's get it started.
All right.
So I think that what you said is paramount. I think that Metroid Prime 4 should just be Metroid Prime 4. It should be, Metroid Prime, again, is like a continuation or its own brand at this point. And I think that there's room for both. Kind of like 2D Zelda and 3D Zelda. So I think Metroid Prime 4 should stay on its own thing. And my open world Metroid game would be a third person, like, action adventure game. I think that's how I do it. And unfortunately, the closest comparable to how it might look and control is Other M, although we're not going to have a sideways Joy-Con and be utilizing weird gimmicks to control our character. It's just it'll look a lot like Breath of the Wild. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, other M, but you're playing with a normal controller.
Yeah.
You could still, you could still power bomb, you could still Batista bomb enemies.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Absolutely. So I think that an open world Metroid game, I think you do want to have it like with a big scale, but I don't think you want to go the Zelda route with how big you want it to be. If I were, I'm just gonna like pick something out of the sky here, but I think my ideal size for an open world Metroid game would be a map that's maybe like half the size of Breath of the Wilds, because I feel like you still do want some of that interconnectivity a little bit more. Even though like in this scenario, like there's no more elevators, there's no more like hard divides between different areas, but I do think that you want to compact it just a little bit, because I think that's a strength of Metroid is like how tight everything feels sometimes, and the atmosphere and how claustrophobic it is. And maybe for anyone that's played Tears of the Kingdom, there's a really cool part where like you're down in the depths. Like they could utilize something like that as well, and make that kind of a cool little cave system or something like that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. And also because another thing is, I don't want to say unlike Zelda, because like obviously Zelda games, are meant to be replayed too. I've replayed Zelda games myself, but like, Metroid in particular is especially like, it's meant for replayability. It's about honing your time. It's about, perfecting that route, and obviously, if Metroid was open world, obviously, it would take a little bit longer than your average adventure, but I feel like it should still have some emphasis on replayability and about, getting that perfect route down to make your way to the finish as fast as possible, to increase that time. And to do so, you would have, to have a Breath of the Wild size world with all that content. I mean, I feel like that would be way too overwhelming for a Metroid game.
I agree. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that like Metroid games are meant to be replayed extensively, whereas Zelda games are kind of you're meant to take in the whole adventure, maybe play it a few years down the road once you're done. I would, like I said, there's going to be some concessions, some things that we're going to have to move on from in Metroid if we're going to do this game. I agree with you in that I would like to keep it shorter and more compact. I would make it so that it is like a meaty adventure that you're really only wanting to play once, and then you take a break from it, and then in a year or two you can come back and like maybe replay it. And to that same note, I would have essentially every single in-game like reward tied to item completion versus time.
Mm-hmm. So on your first point, I think you can do both. I mean, even Breath of the Wild, like obviously obviously this game isn't going to be as meaty as that. I mean, you look at Breath of the Wild and you can beat that game in like 500 hours, or you can speedrun. You can go right to the castle and do it from there and just speedrun it from there after the Great Plateau. So
right.
So yeah, I feel like that's a compromise you could easily make.
So next on the list here, and I'm just talking like kind of just general game mechanics rather than like a story or anything like that. But I think that your abilities are going to function primarily as means of transportation versus like combat or anything like that, or a way to kind of unlock some of the keys that a typical Metroid world might have for you. So what I mean by that is like, for example, like I'll just go right into my next thing that I jotted down. My game would have like the space jump, and you get it immediately. Like basically, the space jump in my open world Metroid game would be the equivalent of like the sailcloth from Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. And what that would do, because I don't think I want Samus like climbing like Link does. I think that's too much, like a little bit too far gone. But
spider balling though.
Well, exactly. Like I think that you could get the space jump, and you could go. Let's just say, for example, you get it, and you have almost picture like a stamina wheel, but it's maybe let's call it the space jump fuel wheel or something like that, right? And you can upgrade that continually.
The Zonite energy.
Hey, there you go. Whatever you want to call this thing. Imagine a big wheel that the more you space jump, the more your wheel depletes. And instead of like, how I'm always kind of complaining about like, man, you reach that point in a Metroid game and like you don't need another missile, you don't need another energy tank. You could always use more like fuel, basically, right, for your space jump. So in my head, I'm kind of picturing like, okay, this space jump, and you could go up or you can go like over. So it could take you vertical or horizontal. But in my head, I'm picturing the space jump just being like it's a way to either get you up or over, like up onto a higher ledge or over across a chasm or something like that. And you could upgrade that eventually during the game so that you can have more time in the air and more maneuverability. And so going back to my original point, the items I think are more a means of transportation than they are, or exploration, than maybe they are in a traditional Metroid game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense, and honestly, I'm all for it because I think the movement upgrades are like easily some of my favorites. I mean, you got the screw attack, you got the speed booster, obviously, which I feel like in an open world, like there's so much
Oh yeah.
opportunity for like really cool speed booster puzzles there, and just traversal in general. Um, we were mentioning the spider ball. Obviously not as speedy, but still, a very cool movement upgrade when used right.
Yeah.
And maybe you could even do that Metroid 2 spider ball justice finally.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know about that one, but we'll see. So that would kind of be my big thing right away is like emphasize the space jump, because your space jump is going to be like your key almost to the whole thing. And of course, like you can get this screw attack. Maybe that I think that could still be like your ultimate weapon in the game, like your screw attack. So that way, when you're jumping, you're like completely slicing open everything, and you get that power back. But it's still going to be more of a means of getting to places that you otherwise couldn't get to, which I mean isn't that far from Metroid right now. And actually, I'm interested to hear your take on this because I haven't played Halo Infinite, but obviously I was thinking too, like the grapple beam would be a very, very good, again, means of transportation that could almost function in like a similar way as like Link's hookshot, I feel like. And by the way too, so in my example here, I'm thinking that this is probably going to play similarly to like a Zelda game, and that it's third person. You can lock on to an enemy, do your battling there, Batista bomb, etc., etc. But the grapple beam, I think, would be like a very, very cool way to like get around and could be really utilized in some fun ways in an open world game.
Yeah, so I actually think it could work in either first or third person. I don't really think. I think you could do it like Metroid Prime style, where he occasionally goes third person for some of the more movement oriented actions of the morph ball. But I also think it could work just third person the whole time either. I don't think. I think that would be dependent on the developer and like how, what they want. I will say one thing though. If this open world style is trying to go for a level of immersion like the Prime games, I think that first person perspective might be critical. But going back to your original question, because I'm starting to go off topic now. Yeah, that Halo Infinite grapple beam, and it's really cool because you can actually upgrade. You can actually upgrade it throughout the adventure to do more stuff. So first, you have one grapple charge, and it has a very set reset time. But then you can upgrade that to make the reset time even faster. Then you can make it electric so that when you grab on the enemies, it electrocutes them or it stuns them, and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could do that with like the grapple beam as well as the other Metroid items as well. We actually had some talk in the Discord server about this. I think it was Minneapolis King. They mentioned the Ori series and how they handle kind of like the upgrade tree. And I'm usually not a fan of upgrade trees, but I think Ori, it's simple enough to where you could do something similar in
Yeah.
Metroid without it seeming too different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could do that, but so my rule with upgrade trees or like anything like that is like the KISS rule. You got to keep it simple, stupid, right? So like make it easy, make it super easy. I would be totally fine with that, and in fact, I would be fine with that in like basically any Metroid game at this point, to be honest with you. But yeah, so I think that the grapple beam could have a lot of utility in this world, both in terms of like, you can grapple somewhere, you can use it on enemies in combat. Maybe you can like lasso a rock or something like that and then hurl it at an enemy or something. I don't know. But I think that it would be like a very expanded ability, even more so than it's been in the past. And the speed booster. So obviously, you touched on it earlier. I think the speed booster would be, again, like a critical item in this game, and I would want to get it fairly early, I think. Fairly early. And I think that, again, some people, I don't know if they're going to like to hear this or not, but I think that you pretty much have it function as it does in Metroid Other M.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Metroid Other M, but I think that the speed booster in Shine Spark is like a highlight of that game. And I think that in your open world game, I actually like, I think like once you start speed boosting, you more or less can just run in a straight line. Like I feel like you don't need to be like weaving around like Sonic the Hedgehog or whatever. But I feel like as long as you're like running in a straight line, nothing wrong with that.
So I agree to an extent. One thing I will say, and I don't necessarily fault Other M for this because it was on the Wii, and like even getting the speed booster working in that game isn't always perfect because I mean, you go through a door and like the game will like freeze while the next room starts to load. So I don't necessarily fault Other M for this, but while I do like how it's implemented in that game, one thing I will say is that there aren't a lot of ways to maintain your momentum. It's kind of you do your speed boost, it's kind of a one and done, and then once you shine spark, like that's it. You can't recover your momentum from that. Like the 2D games, and especially after Metroid Dread, with like all the crazy tech that you can do to like keep your boost going.
Yeah.
I would definitely want to have a way to do that in the 3D games as well. Obviously, you can't have an infinite shine spark just going on nowhere, but like stuff where it's like if you hit a platform right, etc., to like keep your boost going.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, and that's something I would definitely want to emphasize from the 2D games to bring over into this open world game as well.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of some different scenarios for the speed boost because, like, you're right. Like, I don't have a problem with infinite speed boosting, but you can't infinite shine spark. So I think I was gonna keep it kind of that Other M kind of style where like it's kind of like just a bullet shot, and then I was like, well, like how is that kind of is the same purpose as the space jump in this hypothetical game. So I'm kind of thinking like I would have if I'm lead designer and developer at Metroid open world game headquarters, I'm kind of having the shine spark as more of like a blunt force weapon that kind of breaks away pathways and stuff like that versus like a more so a means of transportation.
I definitely I think I disagree with that. I would definitely want some shine spark puzzles, let's just say. I don't want to I don't want to get too
hold on.
Well, I was going to say I don't want to get too deep into it because I do have some ideas for the shine spark, but I want to save that for when we do like a Prime 4 episode of like what we want to see in that game because I feel like it's more suited for that, but I'll let you go on.
I did have an idea so like obviously there's not going to be any kind of like shrines in this game, right? But I think that you can put in somewhat of a Metroid equivalent to shrines in this game. Not exactly one for one, but like imagine that you're in an open world Metroid game and you see like a little entrance to I don't know, like a little beak or something. Like you see a door that's open. And it's a green door, so that means you activate your speed booster. Green is the color of speed booster, okay? So you go in, and once you enter this door, you kind of get switched to a 2D perspective, and then you can do a little shine spark puzzle. At the end of this puzzle, you unlock either more ammo for your space jump, or like missiles, or energy tank, or like something like that. I think if there was like, I don't know, maybe 20 of these in the game, I think that could be like pretty cool. And maybe there's some other ones that are like morph ball puzzles, and maybe there's some other ones that are like combat puzzles. It's kind of stuff like that. Not and puzzles might not be the right word, but like little more so like focused little rooms and areas that are like almost the equivalent of shrines that are going to give you some sort of expansion at the end.
Yeah, like an obstacle course almost.
Yeah, almost. Whereas, like, like I said, some of them can be, like, I feel like you want to have some of them, like I said, like the green ones that that you're going to do some shine sparking in that one. Maybe blue ones, I don't know, you're going to do a morph ball puzzle, whatever. In my game, in this hypothetical game, like, I don't see any doors in this game. Like, I think everything's just very open. The only doors you see will take you to these, like, quote-unquote Metroid shrines. We could call them Chozo shrines. I don't know. Have a little Chozo guy at the end instead of the Zonai. And I think that could be pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm definitely not opposed to 2D. I feel like I'd still want 3D shine spark puzzles, and I think you could still implement those without having like an infinite like 2D shine spark. Like
Yeah.
Like I'll try to keep it vague because again I don't want to spoil what I want to do with the Shine Spark and Prime 4, but like maybe instead of maybe you have that same kind of other M style Shine Spark if you do it regularly, but if you do a certain type of landing or you hit a certain kind of surface, then you're able to like revert back into your regular speed boost, or you're able to like chain your Shine Spark into something else. Again, I'm trying to keep it vague, but like
I think too, like with speed boosting, like I don't think we can ever go back to it cuts off once you jump. So like you have to figure out a way to make it in this game where like if you jump, especially because like presumably there's not going to be a whole lot of like flat long running strips. Like you have to find some way to be able to keep it if you jump. So I mean, smarter people than I can figure out how you do that, but I think that you could do that and it could be pretty cool. So yeah, speed boosting, that's big part.
Yeah, and that's why the speed booster is my favorite item. It's once you do figure out all the ways to keep your momentum and keep it going, like that's what makes the item so fun. And when you take it away, it's just kind of another glorified lock and key. And yeah, I don't want it to be limited to just shoulder impacts.
So moving on, I wanted to talk about. I already talked about kind of the Metroid shrine, so I'll just move on to the next item. When I was doing this, I was getting pretty excited for all the different ideas and stuff, and I was kind of like, man, there's not really a whole lot for like the morph ball and for bombs and stuff like that. And I think that with bombs in particular, maybe that's something that you can kind of move away from a little bit in Metroid, where I think that you could still have a lot of opportunities. Like, in Tears of the Kingdom, you find all the different tunnels and stuff like that. I think that you could still do that in this open world Metroid game, but instead of like those caves and those tunnels in Tears of the Kingdom that are big enough for you to walk in, maybe it's literally like a morph ball tunnel, and there's like multiple of those hidden around the world, and you could probably still use your morph ball in other various ways throughout the game. But I think for bombs, unless like I don't know if I would. I actually don't have an answer for this. I'm curious for your input, but I don't know. Like I think like specifically bombing everywhere to find like a little weak spot or nook is a little bit old hat. I think that like the cross bombs in Metroid Dread were such a good item, and they just immediately kind of got rid of any debris in your way. And I wonder too if you just find the power bombs like right away in this open world Metroid game to give you a little bit more exploration. That was one thing that I'm still not entirely sure how it would fit in, and I don't know if I'm overthinking it or not. But I'm curious about what you think.
I think you might be overthinking it a little bit. Maybe it's just my experience, but really the bombing every surface thing has been more of a symptom of the 2D games, and even then, I feel like that's kind of been alleviated now with like more of the modern Metroid design conventions. That to me, that hasn't really been an issue in 3D, especially with the scan visor, which is you're able to use to gain information about the environment, which I assume the scan visor would return in this open world Metroid game.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec.
Yeah, and so I feel like you could easily implement the bombs. I mean, you could even do it in a simple way that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom do, where the bombable or breakable walls are like very obvious, but still are able to blend into the environment. And then you just drop some bombs there, and even Tears of the Kingdom in particular, I really like what they've done with some of the caves, where it's not just a wall. Sometimes it's like an actual tunnel of rocks that you actually have to carve your way through. And I feel like that could be a fun way to like implement power bombs into the mix as well.
It could be, yeah, definitely. Actually, funny you say that. Right before we got on, I snuck in a little Zelda. I'm in like the tip of Hebra, like the ice region, and I found like literally the edge of the map, and I found like this little cave that was blocked off by some icicles, and I was like, I think I can melt those, and kind of made a cool discovery that way. So that would be kind of something that I think like maybe if you in this open world Metroid game, if you saw something that looked out of place and you went and you kind of like bombed it or something like that, and then you discovered a tunnel, then I think that could be pretty cool. But maybe I was overthinking it a little bit. Like I am sure that you could still do tunnels and stuff like that. I think that I would like for Spider Ball to come back in this game, like the Metroid Prime version of Spider Ball, not the crappy one. So yeah, I think that would be pretty cool.
Here's the thing: you could easily do the Metroid 2 Spider Ball, just make it faster.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like also like boost ball could come back. Although I do wonder if that's a bit redundant in this instance. I guess you could put in some devices that use it, like Metroid Prime, and you could make it not redundant. But I don't know.
I think instead of the boost ball, I would just have the speed booster and just give speed boosting options to the morph ball like in the 2D games.
You know what? Done. That sounds good to me. Okay, perfect. Let's talk about weapons, because I think that for this game, I would want to slightly change the way that Metroid uses weapons, and not like completely drastically, but imagine. Like in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you have your, I don't know, let's just call it 20 weapons or something like that. Now, everybody hates that they break, so obviously we're not going to do that. That is not happening in this game.
What, you don't want to introduce an ammo system? I thought that was your favorite.
Yeah, well, it's not too far off for what I'm... Actually, no, it is kind of far off. I think that, like, you can... So when you're playing Tears of the Kingdom, you can press up, and then you can just scroll and pick your weapon. I would love to bring that over, except what I want to do is I want to press up. Your first option is a charge beam. Your second option is your missiles. Your third option is your whatever beam, wave beam. Your fourth option is your plasma beam. I don't want them to stack in this game because I want to have like a little bit more weapon diversity. But you're finding weapons everywhere you go in Tears of the Kingdom, and like I think finding a weapon in Metroid is a big deal and should stay a big deal. So I want to only have like a finite number of weapons, but maybe we could also open it up a little bit and say like maybe Samus finds like a melee weapon. Like why not? That would be kind of cool. How would she wield it with like one hand and an arm cannon? I don't exactly know, but I don't know. Maybe
you could integrate it in like the left arm somehow. Just have it come out.
I mean, we could literally steal from
the
Halo.
Doom blade, the Predator blade.
Yeah, we could literally steal that knife blade from Halo. And I would be okay with that. But like something like that, right? Like where you can kind of scroll through and you can pick your different weapons and you could pick your missiles, super missiles, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe there's like a different type of missile seeker, something like that. But I think that could be like modern and kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree. So I agree with you when it comes to beams. I definitely want those separated. I kind of prefer everything else to be stacked, though. Like, I kind of like it when Metroid just, decides to stack the missiles. I kind of like not having to worry about...
Yeah, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, managing different kind of missile systems. But I do agree with you when it comes to the beams. I absolutely love it when, how Prime does it, when they all have these unique properties that emphasize various tool sets that you can use.
Yeah, you're right. I'm surprised at myself for saying that. I've complained about that multiple times on this show before. But yeah, just maybe, I don't know, maybe we could have like some different kinds of weapons and like you could have like the screw attack again, which is like your weapon that activates every single time you jump. So that could still be a big deal. You could have your power bombs. You could have maybe some I don't know, like maybe we could do something cool with the grapple beam, like get like a fire addition to it or something like that. So if you lasso an enemy, it's just like burns them alive. I don't know.
Andy, have you been playing Doom Eternal?
You know what? I still have it on my shelf, sealed. Oops.
I was gonna say, because that was eerily close to some Doom Eternal right there.
Well, you know what they say about great minds? That they think alike. So I was actually pretty excited about this next one. So, in Tears of the Kingdom and in Breath of the Wild, you have your runes and your abilities. So like Ultra Hand, Fuse, the other ones. I think that you could do something similar in Metroid, this open world Metroid game. However, instead of those weird abilities, what you're gonna do is you're gonna hold L just like you do in Tears of the Kingdom, and instead of all that stuff popping up there, your Ultra Hand and your Ascend and all that stuff, you have the scan visor, you have the X-ray visor, you have the whatever visor, and that is how you... That would almost be the Metroid equivalent to using runes, where like you can... your scan visor would function essentially the same way as Metroid Prime, but then like your X-ray visor maybe, I don't know, could see, I mean, I guess it would probably function similarly to Metroid Prime as well, but you could go like really crazy, and maybe you could borrow some stuff from Zelda, and you could do like a gravity-based visor that you could input commands and your whatever would be changing. I don't know, but I think that you could use that to alter how you see the open world, and I think that would be pretty cool. And obviously, it's tried and true. We've done it at Metroid Prime. Everybody loves it. I see no reason not to bring it over to this game as well.
So I'm not sure how the current selection of visors, for the most part, would function differently than the Prime games. So I would imagine them functioning similar. Where I think you could implement this, though, is with the command visor, though. I think there's a lot of
you could.
I think there's a lot of opportunity to do some cool stuff with the command visor in an open world that you couldn't do in a traditional Metroid Prime game. That does give it
that would be sick, actually.
That would be able to give it that kind of, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, make your own solution, even if that wasn't the intention kind of thing.
In my mind, I'm picturing, so you select command visor, you look at the world, and much like Ultra Hand in Tears of the Kingdom, anything that's able to be, let's just say, destroyed or moved or whatever with your ship, you can see it kind of highlighted, and you could do something cool with that. I'm sure you'd probably make some new kind of visors for this game as well, maybe different ways that you could interact with the world, but like, man, like even just to bring something back that we already know, like if the Echo visor was back, like, God, that would be so cool. I think the thermal visor is always great. Like, I think that's always a tried and true, fantastic looking visor that could come back. So I think that there's like a lot of cool opportunities there, and certainly there's more creative than me out there that could think of like new cool visors. But I think that it could be pretty awesome if you wanted to do that in an open world game.
One thing I will say, I feel like just being able to summon your ship on a whim would be insanely overpowered just for dealing with enemies on the map. So that would probably need to be addressed somewhat. Although, also to play devil's advocate, it is a Metroid game, and unlike Breath of the Wild, where you have clear open skies for the most part, unless you go down into the dungeon, which I still have not explored the depths, which we'll get to that later. But unlike Zelda, Metroid, that's where it thrives, is in the depths, is in stuff like that. So maybe my ship conundrum wouldn't even be an issue in an open world Metroid game where it does vastly take place underground or in hallways and corridors, etc.
No, I think that your issue is something that should probably be addressed, and it's probably something as easy as like, you've maxed out the power cells in your ship and it needs X amount of time to recharge or something like that. Or, how in Tears of the Kingdom, actually, this is probably a good example. You have your little batteries that power your Zonai stuff, and like, you could almost take that system and apply it to your ship. Whereas like, if you wanted your ship to do something cool, the more batteries you find, the longer it can do cool stuff, or the more enemies it can take out, or the heavier object it can move, whatever. But I think that is probably something that you'd want to look at, even if you're going to be spending a decent amount of time kind of in the depths.
I was going to blow up this enemy here, but Adam didn't authorize it, so actually, what, we're just gonna hold back.
You know what? Let's talk about that. Actually, let's talk about that, because I think that with this open world game, I think that there's like a lot of opportunities to have really cool side quests, and we've never really had side quests in Metroid before. And I'm sure some people out there are rolling their eyes, but man, it adds value to the game. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. And I think that it would be a really good way to, first of all, like I think that you could get these side quests in like a bunch of different ways. So let me give you one scenario. So you've got Adam in your ear. He's just like, Samus, I know you're on this dangerous mission to do XYZ, but there's a bounty out for this monster, and I've located it on this planet, and it's in this faraway region. So, like, A, you have an extra boss battle to do. B, you finally see Samus, the bounty hunter, hunting bounty. And C, it gives you, like, more stuff to do in the actual game. Second scenario would be, you've got your scan visor on, and you're reading a pirate log or something like that, and they're mentioning, like, we just built this amazing facility that's going to be the biggest bounty hunter destruction base, whatever, once it's built. Your new side quest is like, go destroy that thing before it's finished so that this does not come to fruition. Same thing, you could find Chozo lore and say, like, we had a hidden power up in this secret spot. Maybe it's a riddle. And I think there's so much opportunity for really cool side quests. And that's before we even know anything about the story or the setting or whatever. So I would love to see that in Metroid.
That idea is pretty good, actually. I really like it. I'm totally on board, actually. Yeah, I feel like Metroid games in general already kind of have side quests if you think about it. Not literally, but like, but Metroid games, as compact as they are, if you think about it, when you're backtracking for items, in a sense, that's kind of that game's equivalent of a side quest. And I think when you open that game up more, I feel like side quests is like a surprisingly natural addition, like when you really think about it. And especially, like you said, the introduction of like actually seeing Samus, be a bounty hunter, this thing that apparently she is, I've never seen it, but like I feel like that would be a totally natural addition to the world, and I think it could, be another expanded way on how, you upgrade your weapons on this upgrade tree we were talking about earlier as well.
Yeah, I would love that in any Metroid game. It doesn't have to be even necessarily an open world Metroid game, but like, just give us some more cool stuff to do. Like, you're not wrong. Like, you do have these like quasi side quests, but I do think, and listen, I'm not talking like, we don't need a collect-thon side quest, right? Like, we don't need to collect like 10 restless crickets in this game, but like, if we had 25 cool side quests that were challenging and tough, I think that could be like really, really cool.
I'm thinking less of a side quest and more like a bonus objective. That's kind of what I'm thinking in my mind when I think of Metroid, yeah.
Like, those are all, they're almost interchangeable to me, but like, you're right. Like, something simple, like go destroy this, or go hunt this, or go find this. Like, that kind of thing. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but if you do, you're always going to get something for it, which kind of helps us, again, with what I'm going to talk about here in a second, where, a big part of our, our love for Metroid involves kind of backtracking and always being rewarded, stuff like that. And I think that this would help kind of ease that transition a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this is another way that you could kind of, because like Metroid structure, even though it's, fairly non-linear, at its peak, it's still very much constrained, a lot more than what this open world game would be. And I feel like that's people's biggest concern when going open world with Metroid is,
right,
if we take away all these constraints, is it going to be Metroid anymore? And I think this is actually where you could still keep that kind of Metroid influence. Because think about this, for example. Think about this example. You go off the beaten path to a place that, the game wasn't intending you to go. It didn't stop you, but it was like, hey, we're trying to nudge you in this direction. But you went in this direction anyway. And, you find a bonus objective, and, you destroy it earlier. And, it's a lot harder than it would have been had you had these items. But now when you do inevitably have to come back there for story reasons, now it changes what the progression would be a little bit. And now you're about to plow through that even easier than what it would be like if you did the intended developer route.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have been waiting for us to talk about this, that are listening to this, and that's kind of like the big thing about an open world Metroid game, and why it hasn't happened, and why some fans don't want it to happen, is because, like, well, when you're done, do you even have a Metroid game anymore, or is it a game that is a good game but doesn't feel like Metroid? And to be fair, there's still some people I know that don't love Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom because it doesn't feel necessarily like Zelda. And I guess I would say to this, like, you do have to make some concessions if you're going to do an open world Metroid game, and it's not going to feel exactly the same. So, we can try our hardest, but it is going to feel different. And I think that we have to accept that to a certain extent. But I think what can help us out with this is, I think like Metroid can evolve a bit to like keep the core pieces of what makes a Metroid game Metroid while moving away from like the rigid Metroidvania formula. And I think that we can also kind of tighten up what Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom do. So both of those games they have you start, and then they immediately give you 4 different objectives, like main story objectives that you can do in any order that you want. And that's fun, but like I do feel like sometimes that kind of makes the story suffer, and it just doesn't guide you as much as maybe even myself would like, and I love those games. So I think for the Metroid game, what we have like one story objective at a time. And if you, like you said, if you want to go to the other place, you can, but you don't have the equipment to make it that far in yet. So I think that we can keep the essence of a Metroidvania in that way. So, for example, I'm going to give you an example because I know you've been playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom. So, let's just say that you start Tears of the Kingdom and it's just like, okay, you got to go to Zora's Domain. That's your first story objective. You got to go there. You can go to the Hebra mountain range, which is freezing cold. However, you don't have any snow equipment, so you're going to get there and you're going to freeze to death and die because you don't have anything to keep you warm. Whereas
Samus stubbed her toe and lost her various suit.
There you go. Which, by the way, we'd have to think of a cool way to... I don't know if we could... I don't think we want to be switching suits and clothes and stuff like that like we do in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, I as much as I like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, I do, and I get why they have to do it, but like I wish I didn't have to navigate through so many menus in those games, and I feel like that would be an absolute pace killer in Metroid because it is more about that speed and precision in a Metroid title.
I think like in my mind I would be like, okay, like we don't ever have to switch our suit, like, but if you want, there is a suit menu with some cosmetic things like that you can put on. Like
I agree.
Our buddy Griffin was like, I want the cape. I want the cape. So like,
dude, a lot of people want the cape.
Give our man the cape in this game. You know what? Like, why not? Why not? But so, anyways, so I feel like in this example, like you would go first to Zora's Domain, finish whatever the main story objective there is, and then you get as a reward for doing that your snow gear. So then you can go to Hebra, and once you do that, then you can get. And let's just say that this open world game, Metroid game, has like all the classic Metroid names. So like you have to go to Brinstar first and you have to get the various suit, and like you can explore a little bit of Norfair, but like without the various suit you're going to be in big trouble and you can't explore that much. So like I think that you could still implement that in an open world setting, because like even in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you go to Death Mountain, you're on fire. You go to Hebra, you're freezing to death. You go to the Gerudo Desert, both you're freezing and you're on fire. So like I think that there is a way that you could still keep that set of locks and keys while having this open world like sandbox basically. And yes, it's not going to be exactly the same, but I think it won't be like completely dissimilar.
Well, I actually think NES Metroid is like a really good template for this, like you were alluding to earlier, and which is kind of also what Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild did. They went back to the NES title, and then they kind of did what that would be in the 21st century, while also expanding more mechanics as well. But like, yeah, I feel like that original NES Metroid design, because if you think about it, like, you don't have to do a specific order. You can go to Ridley first. You can do Kraid first. You can stick in Brinstar and upgrade yourself first. Or it's really the only thing that you're gated off from is Mother Brain. Everything else is kind of free reign. Yeah. But there is a subtle hand that's nudging you to go in a specific direction to make it easier for you.
So I think you could do it. And like, it's not going to be exactly the Metroid that we know and love, but I think that you can evolve enough that like it still feels like a Metroid game while embracing the open world as well. And I guess I'll say this, like, I think that at this point with Metroid, not that it needs to take a chance, but like I just think that it should. Like when Zelda kind of hit that wall in the late or early, like 2011-ish, and it was like, we need to change, like we need to do something a little bit different. And there's no denying, like when they made the switch to open world, like it completely leveled up the series. Mario made the switch to a huge open world, and Odyssey completely leveled up that. And the list kind of goes on and on. And so, I have to admit, and I actually haven't listened to that episode yet, but when I got the Metroid Prime Remastered sales numbers, I was a bit disappointed in those. Mm-hmm. I thought that they would be stronger than they ended up being. And, we've done the Metroid Prime rig for a long time. We've done 2D Metroid for a long time, and it's solid, but it's never spectacular. And I'm just wondering, like clearly Nintendo does value the series. They pour resources into it. So it's not like, we're not talking about like an F-Zero or anything that's just going to get swept aside. Let's, like, why not go big and try it and see what we get? So,
yeah, absolutely.
That's my pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally in agreement there, because I think the key is, like, especially if you have different developers working on Metroid. Right now we got Mercury Steam and Retro. I don't know if Retro would do this open world Metroid game or if another developer would do it. But as long as you have different team members working on these games, because I feel like right now when it comes to Zelda, I feel like that's people's biggest concern is like regardless of people like the more open world Zelda games or not. It's like, yeah, I like these, but I also like the other 3D Zelda games we got. And, I'm wondering if we're ever going to get those again. And obviously we don't quite know. I feel like top down Zelda, we're going to see another one of those some days. But those other 3D Zeldas, I'm not sure if Nintendo knows what to do with that formula at the moment, aside from like re-releasing old games. Although even that they're not doing everything on that front. When it comes to Metroid, obviously 2D games are going to be their own thing, much like top-down Zelda. And then I think it would, when it comes to this new formula, that's kind of what it comes down to. Is it drastic enough from the Metroid Prime formula to where it's another expansion of Metroid, or if it outright replaces what we think of Metroid Prime? And that I feel like in our pitch, I feel like there's enough differences between the two, but I mean, I don't know, because all of this is theoretical.
I agree. I feel like there's enough differences between the two, but I think that you got to pick one and replace it. If not, hypothetically, right? Like let's say this hypothetical game comes out and sells 10 million copies. Okay, well, if that's the case,
yeah,
I don't know if we're doing any more 2D Metroid. I don't know if we're doing Metroid Prime 5. Maybe we are.
I think we'd still do 2D Metroid. Absolutely. It would be Metroid Prime that I feel like it would be the replacement of, because that's the 3D. That would be the 3D equivalent of this. 2D I feel like is its own domain. I mean, again, you're still gonna get top down Zelda. Kirby, even though Kirby's gone 3D, you're still gonna see 2D Kirby games. I know you're thrilled about that.
Did you see my face? And listen, I know I can hear people already just being like, "No way, not doing this. Don't take away Metroid Prime." And I get that. I understand that. But I do think, like, I think it's tough if, like, you have, like, I think you already kind of have this identity crisis in the Metroid series where, like, each game, like, you have 2D and then you have Prime, and and I think if you add, like, a third kind of sub-series, let's just call it, into that, like, it's a bit much, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta be really, like, I feel like you gotta be putting out, like, a lot of different games. Like, I can think of, like, Super Mario that puts out, like, the regular Mario platformers, 2D Marios, all the kind of spin-offs. But, like, Metroid is no Super Mario. So, like, I feel like you want to kind of keep it consistent with what your game actually is. So, like, maybe Metroid Prime 4 comes out and it doesn't blow the roof off. And it does, let's say, 2-3 million copies. At that point, I might be like, okay, let's try open world Metroid and maybe put Metroid Prime on the back burner for a little bit, which sounds blasphemous, but maybe that's what needs to happen in order to kind of move the series forward. I don't know.
Yeah, if it's hard to say, really. It's hard to say just talking about a theoretical game, but yeah, that would be. It would definitely be between the open world game and Prime 4 in terms of if anything got replaced. I don't think 2D would be affected at all.
Well, I don't know.
Especially
I
as long as Sakamoto is alive, because Sakamoto is always going to be pushing for 2D Metroid, at least, and is always going to be pushing. Right now, he's happy with Mercury Steam, but, like, he's always, let's say that something happens with Mercury Steam, he's always going to be pushing for a developer for 2D Metroid regardless, so.
Yeah, and you know what, I would also say this, like, I think that everything is, like, cyclical, right? Like, remember for a long time, there wasn't really a 2D Mario game, and then New Super Mario Bros. Came out, and it sold, like, 30 million copies. So there was an appetite for that. And I think you're going to see the same thing in, like, maybe 5-10 years. Like, there's going to be a traditional 3D Zelda that's not this ginormous open world game that comes out, and it's just like, it's a really polished Skyward Sword like Zelda game. And I think that enough time will have passed where people are like, man, I miss this, like, this is just what the doctor ordered. So I would say too, like, if open world Metroid came out and maybe for 15 years, that was kind of what they did with Metroid. After that, maybe Metroid Prime comes back, or maybe 2D Metroid comes, or whatever it happens to be, comes back and does make a comeback. So, like, I do think that even if the other style was shelved for a little bit, you're probably not talking, it's gone forever. And in fact, open world, I think as like a genre of games is probably not gonna stick around for the long haul. I don't think, like maybe another 5 years or so, and then they're just gonna get too big and too expensive to make. So I think you are gonna see kind of that smaller scale adventure come back. I don't know, that's my theory, but I could be wrong. But take that for what you will.
I think we got to deal with open world a bit longer than that. I mean, obviously, like, yeah, you have like a bunch of failed Ubisoft projects, like the Ghost Recons and whatnot that haven't done a lot, but like, just still like a ton of like very bloated, in terms of budget open world games that are successful at the same time. And for a lot of gamers, that is a selling point. It's not personally a selling point for me. It's more so just a feature that just works or doesn't work for a game. But for a lot of gamers, that is a selling point. So I feel like that trend is going to continue. And going to your point, maybe that is the boost that Metroid needs. Maybe that is maybe that is finally the bridge that finally sells people on Metroid. It's like, oh, it's open world. It's a quote unquote real game now.
Hey, once you got them. So, once you sunk the talons into these fans with Metroid, why not bring back 2D Metroid? Why not bring back Metroid Prime and kind of, introduce them to what the series was built on? So that's my pitch for an open world Metroid game. I acknowledge that it could be maybe divisive, and I know there probably would be some fans that are skeptical of some of the changes, but I do think that it could work, and I think it could be really good. And if we know anything about Nintendo, they rarely miss, and their open world games particularly have been phenomenal. Like you look at Zelda, you look at Mario, you look at Xenoblade, all of them are phenomenal. So I would have a very hard time seeing this game, if it ever came out, being bad either, which always helps. So there we go. Okay, we ran a little bit long in our discussion. I was hoping that we could circle back and talk a little bit of Zelda. So I guess just really, really quickly, Doom, where in your playthrough so far, if you had to judge, I'm going to put you on the spot, better than, worse than, or different enough where you can't judge than Breath of the Wild?
I'd say right now it's about on Breath of the Wild tier. I haven't explored too much yet. I feel like once I start exploring the depths, because I feel like that's going to be a very different take.
Yeah,
which
it's
I'm
awesome.
I am low key dreading going to the depths. Like everything about those gloom spots just looks super intimidating, and I'm sure there's going to be even more of those gloom hands just absolutely trying to swarm me, take my hearts away. There's probably going to be stuff even worse than that. I'm sure.
Yep.
For all I know.
Yep.
I will say the constructs were a lot easier than I thought. They look super intimidating. Actually, fairly easy to take out. I was overthinking it, but those are actually really fun fights. So I like how you have to.
Are you talking like the big flux constructs, or like
yeah,
those are cool.
Yeah, the Roblox guys. Yeah,
yeah.
I like how you have to use the Ultra Hand to like take out their weak point. I thought that was a really creative boss fight or mini boss fight. I don't know.
Honestly, the fact that this game exists is like mind-boggling, because like you can pick up almost anything in the game, you can glue it together with almost anything else in the game, you can ascend through any single ceiling in the game, you can fuse a weapon with anything. Like it's crazy how much it exists, or how much like stuff is in this game that it exists. I almost feel. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't really like the fusion mechanics. I feel like I could have done without that.
You know what?
I feel like
I was the exact same way to start, but you're gonna reach a point. You might have already reached it, where you're just like, why do all of my weapons absolutely suck? And then you're going to be like, it's because the game wants me to fuse with stuff. And that unlocked for me the importance of fusion. But I was totally with you.
I think I would just rather have like stumble upon like a really powerful buffed weapon though, rather than having to experiment with them, because you already do that with the cooking anyways. And so the having it with the fusion too just kind of feels redundant to me, I guess.
Yeah.
But like otherwise,
okay.
but like otherwise, I'm really enjoying the new mechanics. I actually that the one ability you mentioned where you go through the roofs, I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on that. That is a really cool ability that I've been able to do some really cool unintended sequence breaks, for lack of a better word, with. But like everyone obviously is talking about Ultra Hand, and for good reason. Like because Ultra Hand, like the possibilities are literally endless. But like that sealing ability, and it looks so cool. I love the animation of that. How it looks like Link is like literally swimming through a physical object. Like it's so cool.
The first week of the Zelda cast that we did our initial Tears of the Kingdom impressions, I actually said, I was like, I have to make a public apology to Ascend because I thought it looked kind of lame in the trailers, but I was like, this thing is awesome. It's super fun. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. We'll definitely talk some more Tears of the Kingdom in the future. Maybe you got a Zelda cast appearance sometime in your future. I don't know. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us. I would play this open world Metroid game. I think I would. I think we built a decent game, as we usually do on these shows. Now it's just up to...
maybe you know what? Maybe this open world Metroid game is the Other M reboot.
I mean, if anything, it's the closest thing to, which I think scares a lot of people away as well. So maybe we shouldn't say that actually, but I don't know. Nintendo, if you're listening,
watch the episode first where Andy pitches his Other M reboot. It's like actually unironically pretty good.
That's one of my favorite episodes of this podcast. Actually, so we were talking about that the other day. I was pretty proud of that episode. So yeah, you should check that out. But yeah, we are going to get out of here. Thank you for listening this week. And if you're playing Zelda, hope you're having an awesome time. If you're replaying Metroid Dread or Metroid Prime Remastered, I know you're having an awesome time. So there you go.
I've been doing both. So
I saw a little boss rush. Yeah,
dude, boss rush is so much fun. I wish Dread got more updates, man. Because man, I love what we got. Dread mode is so much fun. The boss rush is. I was saying in my tweet, this boss rush mode is like more fun than like most full games that I've played, and it's like, man, there's so much more you could have done with Dread. But maybe Mercury Steam will do that in their next release, hopefully.
Maybe they'll just give us a sequel like in a decent amount of time. We're gonna be 2
maybe
years
it won't
out in
take
October.
20 years this time.
Hey, here's hoping. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. Make sure that you check us out over on Twitter. I am at Spiteri316. Doom is at Doom Cross, and we are at Omega Metroid Pod. Check out OmegaMetroid.com for all of your Metro needs, guides, maps, news, editorials, thought pieces, you name it, you got it. You can check it out over on OmegaMetroid.com. You can get our theme song there as well. Plus, you can check out our Patreon page, which actually is going to be... actually, I'll save that announcement for a little bit later, but there's going to be some stuff going on there. And of course, wherever you get your podcast, like, subscribe, recommend us to that Metroid fan in your life. That, my friends, is going to do it for us. But until next week, take care, everybody.